Level 1. The Trespasser. You're 10 years old and your grandfather keeps a rifle case in the back of his workshop that he never opens when you're in the room, at least not on purpose. One afternoon, he forgets to lock it. Inside is a Mauser bolt action he'd brought back from a cull he did in Zimbabwe before you were born, the bluing worn silver at the muzzle from 30 years of a leather sling rubbing the same 6 inches of steel. You're not allowed to touch it. You touch it anyway. It's heavier than you expect, cold in a way that feels important, and it smells faintly of gun oil and something older than that, something you don't have a word for yet, but will later learn to call dust and distance. That night you find a documentary about a buffalo hunt in the Zambezi Valley, grainy footage shot on film that's been transferred badly. A professional hunter in a battered hat directing a client through waist-high grass towards something you can't see yet. The buffalo charges 11 seconds into the final scene. The shot comes at 9 meters. You watch it 4 times in a row with the volume low so your parents don't hear. Something in you decides without deciding that this is what you're going to do with your life, even though you don't have words yet for what this actually is, or what it will cost, or how far away it is from a 10-year-old in a workshop that isn't his. Your first weapon is a second-hand air rifle, .177 caliber, bought with money saved from mowing lawns all summer, wrapped in a towel on the bus ride home because you don't own a case yet. You shoot tin cans off a fence post in your uncle's field for 3 months straight, every evening after dinner until the light fails. Your first 50 shots land nowhere near the can. Your uncle doesn't correct your stance so much as ignore you until you fail enough times to ask for help yourself, which he later tells you was deliberate. He shows you 3 things: breathe out halfway, squeeze, don't anticipate the shot by moving the barrel before it fires. You flinch on the 51st shot anyway. The can doesn't move. Shot 62, it finally jumps off the post and spins into the grass. You feel something you will spend the rest of your life chasing. A specific, quiet satisfaction that has nothing to do with the animal and everything to do with the fact that you did the thing correctly. You start reading, not homework, obsession. Ballistics tables copied by hand into a school notebook, cartridge nomenclature, the difference between a .308 and a 7x57, why a double rifle still exists at all when a bolt gun is more mechanically accurate and half the price. None of it means anything practically yet. You're a kid in a country with no dangerous game, memorizing the specifications of rounds you'll probably never fire, because somewhere in your head there's already a plan, unspoken and completely unrealistic, that one day you'll be standing in grass you can't see over with a rifle that matters, doing the thing from the documentary. Level 2. The Novice Stalker. You're 16 and your father finally agrees to sponsor your hunting license, more out of resignation than enthusiasm. The course takes a full winter, weekends in a cold classroom above a hardware store, learning game law, safe firearm handling, and species identification from photographs flashed on a projector for 2 seconds at a time. You fail the identification test once because you call a roe doe a young buck under pressure, and the examiner doesn't soften it when he tells you the mistake. In the field, gets the wrong animal killed. You retake the test. You pass. Your first supervised hunt is a driven pheasant day that humiliates you completely in front of 11 adults you don't know. You miss 6 birds in a row, mounting the shotgun too late every time, swinging through the bird instead of ahead of it, the classic beginner's error nobody can explain to you in words that actually fix it. The gamekeeper, a man who has run this land for 30 years and has opinions about everyone who's ever held a gun on it, tells you flatly that you're aiming instead of pointing, and that the two are not the same skill, and never will be. Your first real kill comes 2 months later on a roe deer stalk at dawn, missed still sitting in the low ground, a single shot at 60 meters that drops the animal where it stands. Your hands shake afterward in a way nothing has ever made them shake before. Not fear, exactly, something closer to the weight of the moment finally landing. The gamekeeper makes you kneel beside it, put a hand on its shoulder, and say nothing for a full minute before he lets you speak. You don't understand why yet. You will, years later, in a country far from here.
Level 3. The Tracker's Shadow. You're 19 and you've saved enough working 2 jobs simultaneously to fly to Zimbabwe for a professional hunter apprenticeship, an 18-month program under a licensed PH that almost nobody outside the industry has heard of and almost nobody who starts it actually finishes. Your mentor is a man named Peter, 4 arms like cable, a limp from a leopard that got closer than it should have in 1994, and a habit of answering questions with silence until you work out the answer yourself. He does not teach you to shoot first. He teaches you to walk. Silent heel-to-toe placement through dry mapane leaf litter that cracks like gunfire under a careless foot. Testing wind constantly with a pinch of ash from a small pouch on your belt, because dangerous game will smell you from 400 meters if the wind shifts, and you will never know it happened until it's too late to matter. You spend 4 months reading Spore before you're allowed to carry a rifle in the field at all, which feels unreasonable at the time and makes complete sense in retrospect. You learn to tell a buffalo track from 6 hours ago from one made 20 minutes ago by the sharpness of the edge and whether dust has resettled into the depression yet. Your first close encounter with dangerous game happens on a routine patrol, not a hunt. A bull elephant 15 meters away, ears out, testing you with a mock charge that stops short in a cloud of dust. Peter doesn't move. You don't move, because he doesn't. The elephant turns and walks away, unhurried, as if the whole thing had been a formality. Afterward, Peter tells you the only mistake you made was that your knees were locked, which he could see from where he stood, and locked knees mean your body was already deciding to run before your mind caught up. You didn't run. That's the only reason you're still talking about it, he tells you, and doesn't elaborate further. That night, sitting by the fire, one of the older trackers tells you a story about a different apprentice, years before you, who did run and survived, but never came back to the bush again afterward. Nobody says the word coward. Nobody needs to. You lie awake a long time that night, working out which of the 2 men you actually are, and you don't reach an answer, only a decision to find out the hard way if it ever comes to that again. Level 4, the Greenhorn PH. You're 23 and you've passed the written exam on game law and calibers, the practical marksmanship test fired under artificial time pressure with an examiner counting down beside you, and the oral examination where 3 senior PHs interrogate you for 2 hours about hypothetical scenarios engineered to reveal whether you panic under stress. What would you do if a client wounds a buffalo and it disappears into thick Jesse bush at last light? There is one correct instinct in that scenario, and it is not the one most candidates give under pressure. You give the correct one. You are licensed for plains game only, not yet dangerous game, which requires logged apprenticeship hours you don't have. Your first paying clients are a father and son from Texas hunting kudu and impala on a 2-week safari that feels to you like the biggest responsibility you've ever carried. You are terrified you'll quote the wrong caliber, mismanage a stock, put a client in the wrong position for a shot. Day 3, you put the sun on a kudu bull at 180 meters through broken mapani scrub, a genuinely difficult quartering shot, and he makes it clean. 1 round, the bull dropping in its tracks. His father cries, actually cries, shaking your hand for a full minute without letting go. You realize watching that the job isn't only about shooting animals correctly. It's about building a memory a family will keep for the rest of their lives and hand down at dinner tables you'll never sit at. You also learn the parts nobody romanticizes, skinning at midnight by headlamp so the trophy doesn't spoil in the heat, 3 hours of paperwork per animal for CITES export documentation that 1 wrong entry can unravel, arguing gently but firmly with a client who wants to shoot an animal that doesn't meet the age and management criteria your concession requires. You say no more often than you expected to. That's the job too, and nobody tells you that part in advance.
Level 5, the Buffalo Man. You're 28, and you've logged your dangerous game apprenticeship hours under 2 different senior PHs, tracking buffalo, elephant, and lion on foot without incident across 2 full seasons, and you sit the second license exam, considerably harder than the first, oral and practical both, examined by men who have personally watched colleagues get killed by the animals you're being tested on. You pass. Your first dangerous game client wants Cape buffalo specifically, the animal responsible for more professional hunter deaths across the continent than any other, nicknamed Black Death by people who don't feel the need to explain the nickname twice. Day 4 of the hunt, you and your tracker close on a herd bull holed up in thick riverine bush,
Wind steady in your favor, 30 meters of visibility collapsing to maybe 8 as the vegetation thickens. The bull comes out of the thicket at a dead run before either of you sees him clearly. Not a mock charge, a real one. Head low, horns forward, exactly the way Peter described it to you years ago in a classroom, and exactly nothing like you imagined it would actually feel. You put the client behind you with your left hand without consciously deciding to, and fire your backup rifle at 11 meters. The internal organ shot Peter drilled into you 100 times on paper targets you privately thought, back then, was excessive repetition. The bull drops 4 meters from where you're standing, close enough that dust from its collapse settles on your boots. You don't remember deciding to pull the trigger. Your hands shake for an hour afterward, worse than the roe deer at 16 by a wide margin. And this time, you understand completely why the old gamekeeper made you kneel and stay silent all those years ago on a misty morning in a country a world away from this one. Level 6, the Landholder. You're 34, and you've leased your own hunting concession, 18,000 hectares of communal land bordering a national park, negotiated directly over 8 months with the local community trust that legally owns the wildlife rights on that ground. This changes the job completely and permanently. You're no longer only a hunter. You're a land manager, an employer of 40 local staff, including trackers, skinners, cooks, and anti-poaching scouts, and a mediator, constantly balancing the community's need for revenue against the wildlife population's need to sustain hunting quotas without collapsing. You set your own off-tick numbers based on annual aerial game counts flown by a contracted biologist, not on guesswork or client pressure, and you turn away 3 separate paying clients in a single season who want to shoot animals outside the age bracket your own data recommends. It costs you real money you can see and feel every time you say no. You do it anyway, because the alternative is a concession with no huntable game left in 5 years and no income for 400 families in 10. Your anti-poaching team catches a snaring operation 11 kilometers inside your boundary during a routine patrol. Cable snares set indiscriminately for bushmeat that have already killed a young giraffe by the time your scouts find it, still tangled, days dead. You don't romanticize this part of the job to anyone who asks about it at dinner parties back home. It's exhausting, chronically underfunded, and it never fully stops, not for one season, not ever. You also spend an entire dry season mediating a dispute between 2 families in the community trust over how the hunting revenue should be split, a conflict that has nothing to do with rifles or wildlife and everything to do with old grievances you didn't create and can't fully resolve. You learn that running a concession means being fluent in things Peter never once mentioned during your apprenticeship: budgeting, local politics, the specific patience required to sit through a 3-hour trust meeting conducted partly in a language you're still only half fluent in, because the decisions made in that room matter as much to the future of the land as anything you'll ever do with a rifle in your hands.
Level 7, the Empire Builder. You're 40, and your name appears in booking requests from clients before they've spoken to anyone else in your company, which now runs 3 separate concessions and employs over 100 people across 3 countries during peak season. You're rarely the one holding the rifle anymore, and that shift bothers you more than you let anyone see. You spend more time in Las Vegas at the annual hunting industry convention negotiating outfitter contracts across a hotel conference table than you do in the field reading wind. You spend more time on satellite calls with wildlife ministries, arguing over quota allocations than you do actually tracking spoor at first light. You testify, informally, at a CITES review panel about sustainable use hunting models, defending an industry that funds more anti-poaching enforcement across the continent than most conservation NGOs combined, to a room that includes people who have clearly decided you're the villain in the story before you've said a single word. You don't win everyone over. You stopped expecting to years ago. You still take one hunt personally every season. No assistant, just you and a tracker and a client, walking the ground yourself, because the day you stop doing the actual work is the day you stop understanding the business you built. Level 8, the Elder Statesman.
You're 52, and you've mentored 11 apprentice professional hunters the exact way Peter mentored you, teaching them to walk before you teach them to shoot, including 2 who now run their own concessions and 1 who didn't survive a leopard encounter in her 3rd year, a loss you still carry into every apprenticeship briefing you give without exception. A buffalo you tracked and recovered for a client 11 years ago now sits in a natural history museum exhibit on African megafauna, donated after the client passed away, credited with both your names on the small brass placard beneath the mount. You've written testimony that's been read into wildlife policy discussions on 2 continents by people who will never meet you. You still walk into thick Jesse bush at dawn, testing wind with a pinch of ash from the same kind of worn leather pouch Peter wore on his belt back in 1994, because the moment you stop doing the field work yourself is the moment the knowledge in your head stops being real and starts becoming theoretical. And theoretical knowledge in this profession eventually gets a professional hunter or a client killed. Level 9. The full circle. You're 60. Somewhere right now, a 10-year-old is standing in a workshop that isn't theirs, holding a rifle they were told explicitly not to touch, feeling how much heavier it is than they expected, breathing in something that smells like gun oil and dust and distance. Somewhere right now, that same kid is watching 4 seconds of grainy footage on a phone instead of a television, a professional hunter in a battered hat, grass too tall to see over, and deciding without deciding that this is what they are going to do with their life. They don't have the words for it yet either, and they won't for a long time. They'll spend a decade finding them. 1 missed shot, 1 correctly read wind, 1 silent minute kneeling beside something at dawn at a time. Most of them will stop somewhere in the first 3 levels, worn down by cost or fear or the sheer unglamorous patience the work demands before it gives anything back. A few of them won't stop, and one day, one of them will be standing in bush they can't see over with a rifle that matters, doing the thing from the video, wondering how exactly they got there, and knowing with complete and quiet certainty exactly how.